guys do with the music, right? So thank you for choosing to be with us here today, whether you're here in person or out in our world of Zoom or YouTube Live. Today we start a new month and a new monthly theme. And we've decided to shift over to the theme that is used by many of the centers and Centers for Spiritual Living Tucson, or Spiritual Living Beyond Tucson. And the theme for the month is Superpower Creativity. So do you think of curiosity as a superpower? Maybe. And is that thought of, is being curious, is that a plus? Or is it better to kind of hang back and hide? All of us want to think of ourselves as curious, right? We do. That's what because that's like outgoing and exciting and, engaging. And there's a part of us that likes things not to change. Right? It's like, well, I'm curious when I want to be curious, but I'm really not always. And that, I think, is part of the human condition. And so the shift in mind of switching towards thinking of curiosity as a superpower, that notion of leaning into the new, that leaning into the next yet to be, that's a choice. And it's one that we get to make. And we get to make it over and over and over again, because sometimes really staying home in my fuzzy slippers is a good idea. But I'm not terribly curious when I'm doing that. So we're going to look at that all month. And as I'm guessing is true for everybody else, it certainly is true for me, there are times and moments and degrees when I'm not necessarily like jonesing to be real curious. And there's a difference between being pulled by curiosity and being forced into it. And so when you're forced into it, is it really curiosity? No, it's not. And when I was writing this yesterday, I was like, oh yeah. And when I got that new Kindle Paperwhite, when it was a new hot thing, and I opened the box, it was a present. I opened the box and I turned it on and I turned it to Mandarin. I don't have a clue what I did. But I instantly, the words were English there for an eighth of a second, and then they were not. And I'm looking at this brand new, sparkly, shiny toy, and I'm going, I don't know what to do with this now. I don't even know how to turn it off because I'm not sure how I turned it on. And so I figured that out, and then I realized that it was staying in Mandarin. And my brother was there, and he's younger than me and smarter for electronic stuff. And he said, so I bet there's a community support group, a forum. And I bet you're not the first one to try that. So I bet if you go to find the forum on, Google or something, and you type in, help, I just turned my Kindle Paperwhite to Mandarin, how do I put it back to English? That some kind person will tell you. And of course, it was Christmas Day, right? Of course, it was Christmas Day. And so I thought, I got nothing to lose. I got this brand shiny toy and I can't use it. So I went over to my computer and I did all that. And within 15 minutes, some lovely person got on the channel thing and said, it's real easy. We love it when that happens, right? It's real easy. You don't even have to know what you're doing. You just have to count to like 4. So you go to this column and you count 4 down and you choose that. And then you go to this column and you count 4 down and you choose that. And lo and behold, it was English again. Was I curious? No. Was I desperate? Yes. The same thing happened this morning when we're shifting over from the old Zoom room to the new one. It's like, well, it ought to work. So that's not curiosity. That's kind of necessity pushing us towards the future. So the question today is, are we being pushed by necessity? Or are we being pulled by some great new brand, yummy, juicy thing that's coming? And we get to decide that. So I'm sitting in my dining room working on this talk yesterday, and I'm thinking, okay, so curiosity, this isn't a topic we've danced with for a long time, but it's never one we focused on particularly. But where have I read about curiosity? And my brain said, it's in that Brene Brown book you guys did that last summer. Oh yeah, Atlas of the Heart. So I pulled it out of the bookshelf and I opened it up, and lo and behold, Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart, chapter 4, places we go when it's beyond us. And Brene wrote, emotions in this chapter include awe, wonder, confusion, curiosity, and surprise. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, those are mostly good ones. And I'm thinking, yeah, but what about the Kindle Paperwhite thing? That wasn't, well, it was surprise. It was definitely confusion, but it wasn't that. It was something else. So I looked at the index for the book, and it's like, oh yeah, there's this chapter of anxiety, worry, overwhelm, dread, avoidance, and excitement. That was chapter 1, when things are uncertain or too much. Well, that describes my Paperwhite example, and it's a choice we can make, whether to be leaning into this something bigger, uncertain, or leaning into this scared place. And we get to choose. We get to use our imaginations, and we get to decide how we want to be in the world. And so here's Brene writing about this thing about curiosity and confusion. Brene wrote, confusion is necessary for learning because it motivates us to learn, and it triggers the ability to solve problems. So it's like, okay, if I'm actually totally comfortable, then I never learn anything new, because I'm really comfortable in my status quo and I don't have to make any changes because I know exactly how the world works. Yeah, well, but we're, learning creatures. There is a part of us that is inspired and motivated by change that we choose. And we get to decide to be motivated by change that happens to us. Like turning your Paperwhite into Mandarin. Or switching Zoom channels. So we get to choose how we wish to be in the world. What does it take to be able to choose and just not go, oh, I can't do this? What does it take? We've got to have some clue. We've got to have something to hold on to that moves us from panic and fear and, oh my God, the world is ending, to possible. And it could be some basic skill or somebody else knowing something, like the community room and the woman who'd already done the Mandarin thing before. Or it could be that we know somebody who knows, or that we trust our own skill and competence, that we figured stuff out before and we can figure it out again, right? And so there's this whole range of, we either are comfortable enough in our own skin, or we trust that someone else has walked this ground before, or we trust that we know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows the answer. And then we can, I started to say attack, but then we can attempt, then we can explore and engage with these new ideas. One potential remedy, solution, pathway for this is the spiritual thought that Maria read earlier today from It's Up to You. I loved how you said that. The first step in overcoming any new fear is to concede, which is accept, that God is for us. This done, we have at once overcome the fear, by seeing there is nothing to be afraid of. If God's on our side, we can't screw it up. Oh, yeah, that. The world is all right, and we can meet it on its own terms. And here's his caveat. But let us meet it constructively, as a gloriously becoming thing, knowing that the kingdom of God inhabits every soul. No one has ever tried and failed in conscious cooperation with the universe itself. So when we align with the universe itself, we cannot fail. Cannot fail. When we go, oh my God, I can't read Mandarin, that's not necessarily cooperating with the universe, is it? It's saying, within my own self, I can't read Mandarin or know how to fix this. But somebody knows. And if I'm aligned with the universe, I remember that somebody knows. The next line in It's Up to You on page 12, Holmes wrote, "You are ruler in the domain of your mind, and the genius of God is under the command of your choice." Oh. The genius of God is under the command of your choice. We get to remember that. We get to remember that we have the power and authority and ability to make choices that deliver us where we choose to go. And the first step is remembering God is always for us. And if God is for us, who can possibly be against us? Right? It's easier said than done because it's a practice. It's a constant practice. So there are two more pieces that are part of Brené's curiosity section. Curiosity is recognizing a gap in our knowledge about something that interests us and becoming emotionally and cognitively invested in closing that gap through exploration and learning. So it's not being pushed by the terror of, it's moving towards and being interested in the solution for. And then Brené quotes Einstein. The most important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. Sounds like something he would say, doesn't it? Brené continues, curiosity's reason for existing is not simply a tool for acquiring knowledge. It reminds us that we're alive. So that desire to be part of life, curiosity is that tool that enlivens us to get out of bed in the morning, to get up and get moving and go, okay, God is for me, what is possible? Okay, well, that's not what I had in mind, but all right, that works. I can do that. And so we each get to practice that as part of our daily way of moving into our lives and this center in moving forward in this space of time. It's a practice, and we get to decide to practice it. And part of my daily practice is to read Robert Greene's Daily Laws. I don't necessarily like the man, but I like what he writes. And during the month of February, all of his daily readings are about being willing to be transformed in a good way by what happens in life. And at the beginning of the month, every month, he tells a personal story about something that happened in his life that he uses as fodder to remember. And in the beginning of the February story, he talks about when he took a gap year after he finished college and before he started his official working life. And he went to Europe and he was hanging out, And he went to Paris and he loved Paris. And he thought, well, I had French in college. That'd be all right. I can manage. Well, the college Paris that you might or might not have learned, that you might or might not have gotten a good grade in, isn't worth much when you're walking around the streets in Paris. And he thought he had it in the bag. He thought he was like, I did French in college, I can do this. And he walked around and he started talking to people and they looked at him funny. Like, what was that? You poor stupid American. And he decided that it mattered to him. And he decided to get curious about French language and French culture and French people. And he decided to invest his time and energy and curiosity and interest and enthusiasm towards actually getting a comprehension of Frenchness. And he decided that he wouldn't speak English to anybody. And he would learn this language. And so he did this full immersion thing, right? Where he started trying to live as a French person would live. And got to the place where he actually was dreaming in French. And he could work at a hotel. And yeah, they would know he was foreign, but he actually had grasp of the language. And that was a choice. Because he did have a choice between taking his marbles and going home and giving up on this French thing altogether, or deciding to become a foreign person who was interested and curious and desiring to have that experience of being immersed in the French culture. He stayed there for 18 months. He had a blast. He still speaks French. And he had enough grasp of the language that he had a hook. He had a way in. He had something he could stand on as a base. And then he could move to a deeper understanding. In The Art of Life, which is one of my favorite books, Dr. Holmes wrote on page 15 and 16, he told a story. And the story goes like this. We can imagine a fish being told he is surrounded by water, but not quite realizing what this means. We can imagine the fish swimming north and south and east and west in search of water. And if we think of the fish as a person, we can even imagine him looking up in books of fish lore, studying fish psychology and philosophy, always endeavoring to discover just where the waters of life are and how to approach them. And perhaps some wise old fish might say, it has come down to us through tradition that in ancient times our ancestors knew about a wonderful ocean of life. And those ancestors prophesied a day when all shall live in the waters of life happily ever after. And can't we imagine all the fish getting together and rolling their eyes and wagging their tails, looking mysterious and beginning to chant, "Oh, water, 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 we beseech you to reveal yourself to us. We beseech you to flow around us and through us, even like you did to those old people." And as a matter of fact, we are in the water of infinite life, as the fish is in the ocean. The spirit of life is all around us. It flows through us. It permeates everything. It is the essence of all form, and it flows through every condition. And yet we're still looking for it. What we look for, we unwittingly look at, but fail to recognize. A time of uncertainty and change is rapidly approaching for this community. And some of you may be tempted to look back at the good old days when the ancient ancestors knew about a wonderful ocean of life. You may even forget that you, individually and collectively, are already swimming in that same sea of limitless possibility that flows in, around, through you, for you, now and forever. Many of you have trained in this science of mind philosophy for a good long while. And when you remember, when you practice, you know the truth, the oneness of life, and that the all good has already been given to you. Your job is to be curious about what's possible and what this community wishes to be next. And to practice in community, supporting yourselves and each other. Because that's where, when you don't remember the truth, someone else will. Because it's the collective awareness that helps carry everyone towards the desired goal. Ernest Holmes also had a little book. It's almost like a Poor Richard's Almanac. It's a book of aphorisms and maxims and things that he gathered together. I can imagine it like he had a moleskin in his pocket and he wrote stuff down. You know, that's what it reminds me of. One little quote: "Life is to be lived, and the persons who are most flexible and non-resistant to it not only get along the best in it, but they are also the ones who are happy." So being flexible and non-resistant to life makes space to be able to look up and see the goodness that surrounds all of us. And if you want a copy of New Horizons, it's available on the Science of Mind archives as a PDF. You can't buy it in paper copy, I don't think, anywhere. But it's available as a PDF. So I'm going to close with a part of a daily reading from a couple of days ago from this month's Science of Mind magazine, written by Dr. Raymond Anderson. He starts miraculously, but we know how that works, right? With the same quote from Einstein that Brené Brown used in her book. Blew my mind when I looked at it. The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existence. One cannot help but be in awe when they contemplate the mysteries of eternity, of life, and of the marvelous structure of reality. The quote is actually from an interview that Einstein did in Life magazine in 1955. Dr. Raymond was writing about the children's book, Curious George. You probably remember that, reading it to kids or grandkids. The curious monkey who was always in trouble. He wrote, "George invites us into a greater level of curiosity. It is our commitment to seeking, finding, and evolving. It is in our commitment to seeking, finding, and evolving that we find and live our spiritual magnificence. George and his friend, the man in the yellow hat, are archetypes of balance, of yin and yang. They temper one another and offer lessons of living in harmony, offering forgiveness and having compassion." What made George curious? Was it not his desire to learn, to explore, and to understand? Not only the object of his curiosity, but himself as well, in relation to the vast adventures he embarked on? The way of spirit is the way of ever-increasing expansiveness, and as such, there is no place for playing small. That is not our nature, no matter how much we try to conform to the paradigms handed down to us. George, the bodhisattva of curiosity, offers us a new path forward. He offers us courage. So find your courage to be curious, even when the world might feel a little uncertain and you don't have everything figured out. That space of wonder, right? Remember to live in that space of possibility, of curiosity, of pure imagination. It's in you. It's for you. Do that. Bless yourself and bless us all. Thank you. So now I'm going to do the prayer. And if I've said something useful for you, hold it in your mind. Thinking affirmatively about this thing called life. I celebrate this opportunity to be alive, to remember this thing called choice, to remember this way of being in the world, of seeing life with curious eyes and a curious mind. Knowing that at every moment, as I remember, God is for me. God is for all. Each one, me, every person who hears my voice, has the possibility of claiming the good they desire, claiming the joy they desire, claiming the life they desire. The gift is given. Each one of us gets to accept it. So I accept it for me. And I know that same acceptance for all. Because life is a gift, and we get to receive it. I rest in this truth. I relax in it. I allow it to flourish in me and in this community and in all of life. I know it is good and very good, and I let it be. And so it is.